Hey everybody, so we are a little bit more than halfway through the month of January, which means we are also slightly more than halfway through the January transfer window in world soccer, an opportunity for most leagues in the world, particularly in Europe, to add to their rosters mid-season, and the window is open for the exact length of the month of January. And in the Premier League, it's been a really quiet month. Not a lot of teams have strengthened much, despite most of them needing to improve in some way or another, unless, of course, you're Liverpool. And if you want to see my thoughts on how every team might need to strengthen in the next couple of weeks, you can check out the video whose link is appearing right now to get my quick thoughts on every team. But right now, I want to focus just on Chelsea, and for a couple of reasons. Number one, of course, they're the team I know more about than any other team in the Premier League and who I follow the most closely, so I feel like I can do a deep dive like this. And also because they're in a bit of a unique situation. As some of you may know, and some of you may not, Chelsea couldn't sign any players over the summer, and this was a particularly big deal because they lost star player Eden Hazard to Real Madrid and really didn't have any opportunity to try to replace him fully at that time. Chelsea had been given a transfer ban that was supposed to last for 2 windows or 1 full year as punishment for improperly signing youth players. Basically, FIFA's got all these rules around when clubs can sign youth players, particularly from other countries. Most notably, if you're younger than 16 years old, your family must have moved to England or to whichever country you're playing in now for non-football reasons in order for it to be legitimate. And there's tons of examples of Europe's biggest clubs, Real Madrid and Barcelona among them, who have broken these rules over the years by trying to, skirt the system and get a leg up on the competition by getting to youth players before other teams are legally allowed to bring them in. So anyway, recently the Court of Arbitration for Sport, which is basically like the Supreme Court that somehow governs all of the sports world. I'm not totally sure how they have that sort of jurisdiction, but anyway, the Court of Arbitration for Sport shortened Chelsea's ban, saying that the 2 windows was too harsh, reduced it to 1 window, the summer that's already happened, meaning that now Chelsea can sign players this January, although they have not yet. This decision is particularly informed by the fact that UEFA, the governing body of football in Europe, found that Manchester City had committed similar offenses, was considering banning them from the Champions League for a year, but then Man City received basically a probation punishment that didn't have any real effect, and so I think that probably significantly informed how the Court of Arbitration for Sport decided to deal with this and reduce Chelsea's penalty. So anyway, Chelsea can sign players. They haven't yet, but today I wanted to go through, let's look at the entire squad. Where might they strengthen? And in the areas of most need, who might Frank Lampard look to bring in? Chelsea currently sit in 4th place in the Premier League, and while that's better than certainly I expected them to do, and I think a lot of people did, given that they were playing so many young players and did not have the chance to strengthen the squad in the summer, that's really only a credit to the struggles of teams like Manchester United, Tottenham, and even Arsenal, who are way out of the picture and were at least expected to challenge for the top 4. So it's less about how well Chelsea are playing, especially right now. Their form over the past couple months has not been great, and more so that there's just really no one else pushing them all that strongly right now. So January is an opportunity to really try to put some distance between them and the chasing pack. So let's start with the goalkeepers, and Kepa has certainly had his struggles this season. He's been one of the poorer keepers in the Premier League in 2019-2020, but he's still only 25 years old, which is relatively young for a goalkeeper. Heck, Gianluigi Buffon, yes, he's an all-time great, but he's still playing at 41. So while Kepa may not have lived up to the €80 million price tag Chelsea paid a year and a half ago for him as kind of a panic buy replacement for Thibaut Courtois, he's still got a lot of time to live up to that hype, and I think at a minimum, they need to give him the rest of the season to further evaluate and not make any changes to the goalkeeping position until at least next summer. Willy Caballero is a perfectly capable backup when Kepa lets him get on the field, and he's a penalty specialist as well, so I think he's perfectly fine to have there as a backup right now. I don't see any reason for Chelsea to go after a goalkeeper in the remaining days of January. Now we come to the defense, and specifically the fullback positions, which have been a huge problem for Chelsea this season. The fullbacks are the best example of how this squad still has so many fingerprints from the 2 years Antonio Conte spent at the helm, employing his 3-4-3 system using wingbacks instead of traditional fullbacks. This problem is most exemplified at the left back position, where right now Chelsea have Marcos Alonso and Emerson, who are much more comfortable going forward and contributing to the attack than they are defending, and that's been reflected in neither of them getting much game time, especially lately. Instead, Cesar Azpilicueta, who has deputized as a left back before, has been filling in that role, and Reece James, now that he's back from injury, has been playing at right back, and that seems to be, at least in Frank Lampard's opinion, and I would agree, the best defensive decision right now for Chelsea. I suppose Fikayo Tomori, who Frank Lampard clearly has a lot of trust in, not only due to the amount of time he's given him to play this season at such a young age, but because they worked together at Derby last season when Tomori was there on loan, he could play right back, but again, with Reece James showing so much promise, I think he's going to get as many minutes as he can there, and so I don't think that's really a solution either. Chelsea definitely need another fullback, and definitely needs to be a left back if they sign one. So let's look at who Chelsea might go out and try to sign to fill that left back spot. The name that's getting thrown around the most is Leicester's Ben Chilwell. He's quickly become one of the best left backs in the Premier League and is establishing himself as the best left back for England. So he's had a really big last couple of years growing into this Leicester team in the era after they won that title with Christian Fuchs at left back. There's really not an obvious weakness to Chilwell. He chips in with a few assists now and then, can put a really good cross in. He's solid defensively, but there are a couple issues. First of which, it's January, which means every player is a little bit more expensive because generally speaking, buying in January, you're often buying more for immediate need rather than long-term investment, although I think Chilwell would be both. He's also English, and if you know about the Premier League, English players command sums far above what they're actually worth in the open market. I will cite Harry Maguire's deal to Manchester United this summer as the best example of that. So in terms of price right now, Chelsea would probably have to pay, I don't even know. If Man City's buying fullbacks for 50 million, given the circumstances, Ben Chilwell might push 75 million pounds in terms of what Chelsea would have to pay for him, and that is a lot for any defender, especially in January. I would understand if Chelsea wanted to wait to the summer to shell out that kind of money, or, as I'll outline here in a second, they could go abroad and outside of England and look for guys who are probably just as good as Ben Chilwell, but won't cost them as much right now because of, his Englishness and the fact that we're in January. Furthermore, Leicester are having a phenomenal season, on course right now to finish in the top 4 and qualify for next year's Champions League, and they won't want to screw that up at all, and Chilwell would be a huge loss for the Foxes. I'm guessing Brendan Rodgers and Leicester are going to be looking to do all they can this January to not sell any of their key players, Chilwell one of the most chief among them. So where else could Chelsea look for left back help? I would point to Portugal and 2 left backs in particular at 2 of Portugal's elite clubs in Benfica and Porto. First at Benfica, it's Alex Grimaldo, who's a Spanish left back, who's, if you're a Football Manager player or a FIFA career mode player, you're very familiar with because his overall always rises rapidly within a couple of seasons. He's a guy who many of the top teams across Europe have had on their radar for a while. It just seems like a matter of when, not if, Grimaldo was going to get a move to a top club, and Chelsea may have a unique opportunity here. He's 24 years old, he's a graduate of Barcelona's La Masia Academy, and with Benfica getting knocked out in the group stage of the Champions League and heading to the Europa League, Grimaldo, who is without doubt a Champions League quality player, could see this January as an opportunity to stay in the UCL rather than having to battle it out on Thursday nights and who knows where in Eastern Europe. The other in Portugal is Alex Telles, who is the left back for Porto, and he, kind of like Grimaldo, is one of these players that, top teams have circled around for a while. He's always seemed destined to get a move to a big club, but it just hasn't quite happened yet. He's a little older than Grimaldo at 27, so Telles is in his prime right now, and he just recently got his first cap with the Brazilian national team. So if he's trying to capitalize on good form, this is probably his opportunity to make a big move, either this winter or this upcoming summer. This is prime time for him. He's playing right now the best soccer of his career, and if he wants to get out of Portugal and take a step up into somewhere like the tops of Germany, France, Italy, or to the Premier League, this is the time he needs to seriously think about doing that. The final player I want to look at as an option for Chelsea at left back is Nicolas Tagliafico at Ajax, an Ajax team that made that improbable run to the Champions League semifinals last year and had basically all of Europe except Spurs and Liverpool fans rooting for them. A lot of that team got broken up already. We saw Matthijs de Ligt go to Juventus. We saw Frenkie de Jong go to Barcelona. And Ajax have just not been quite as good this season. They're in a heated battle for the title in the Netherlands, not running away with it. and they've been knocked out of the Champions League at the group stage. So clearly not flying as high this year, and someone like Tagliafico might see this as a great opportunity to get out. Tagliafico is another left back who's got a lot of pace, like guys like Emerson and Alonso on Chelsea's roster, but while he likes to get involved offensively like they do, he is much less questionable defensively, so it wouldn't be that much stylistically of a change for Chelsea. Tagliafico, like Telles, is 27, so he's right at that peak right now, and if he wants to get himself a big money move, his time to do that and maximize his value and his career earnings is going to be on the downslope within the next couple of years. So this, again, like Telles, could be a big opportunity for him to make a big move at the right time. Will Chelsea buy any of these guys? I'm not really sure. It's looking less and less likely, given that we only have 10 days or so left in this January window. It's starting to look like Frank Lampard might just stick with what he's got and then reevaluate in the summer. But I do think that even though you'd have to pay a bit of a premium because we're in the winter, not the summer, that it would benefit Chelsea immensely and really raise their odds of sticking in that top four if they signed someone to strengthen at left back. Center backs, I'm not going to dwell on. While there may have been some injury issues and some questionable performances at time this season, Chelsea have so many options there with Rudiger, Christensen, Tomori, and Zuma, all seeming to be trusted by Lampard to play there. Azpilicueta can deputize there as well. So you might be able to argue that Chelsea could do better at center back and find someone more consistent than someone like Tomori, who's still a very raw talent. But they have no shortage of players there, and if they're going to invest money, this isn't the place to do it right now. The same can be said for the midfield, where Frank Lampard, it looks like, has tended to favor, although he's mixed it up quite a bit, a 4-3-3 usually, with probably the strongest group being N'Golo Kante, Jorginho, and Mateo Kovacic. They might not have the most amount of depth in midfield, but you've got Mason Mount and Ruben Loftus-Cheek, who will be coming back from injury hopefully soon, who can fill a more attacking mid role in one of those three slots if needed. They might not have a ton of depth in midfield, but they've got a lot of quality options there, and I don't see Chelsea going out and spending big on any central midfielders right now with the quality they have there already. The other intriguing spot, in addition to left back, where there seems to be some potential obvious need, is on the wings, and this would require a really, really big investment, even far beyond what Chilwell would cost if Chelsea were looking to make a deal for the kind of player they'd want to add here. If you look at who's on the roster right now, you have Willian, who has played well this season, but again is past 30. Pedro, likewise, who's hardly featured at all and clearly seems to be out of favor. Christian Pulisic, who while he's looked great in spurts this season, is struggling to stay healthy with injuries. And you've got Callum Hudson-Odoi, who, although he's looked better in his last couple appearances, has struggled to replicate the form that he showed in cameos last year that earned him a £7 million bid from Bayern Munich, which Chelsea, of course, turned down. But he has not looked up to that level of spending by some other club this season. So there's certainly a question of whether Chelsea have the necessary quality on the wings. The biggest rumor that's been thrown around as a player that Chelsea could go out and get to fill this void is Jadon Sancho at Borussia Dortmund, who has all the intersecting factors to make him absolutely as expensive as possible. First of all, it's January. And second of all, like Ben Chilwell, he's English. And not only is he English, he's probably the most in-demand English player right now. While he's kind of gotten his footballing education the last few years at Dortmund after leaving the Manchester City Academy, Sancho's going to come back to the Premier League at some point. It's just a question of which of the super clubs are going to bring him in. Realistically, the only teams you could see making such a move are Chelsea, Manchester City, and Manchester United. Liverpool might be shy to spend that kind of money, and also, there's not a starting spot open on the wings right now at Liverpool with Mo Salah and Sadio Mane. Personally, given Manchester United's uncertainty and struggles, and how much competition for playing time there already is on the wings at Man City, not even a biased opinion, I think Chelsea would be the best fit for Sancho right now if one of those three clubs were going to try to buy him. He would start immediately, and I think he'd really give a new dimension to their attack. He's quicker than maybe anybody they've got, even Pulisic, and he just has that kind of overall quality and doesn't seem to go through as many game-to-game lulls as Willian sometimes does, where he'll have one great game and then be anonymous for the next three. But if they were going to bring in Sancho, it would be without doubt all they did in this window, because his price tag would probably be something in the neighborhood of £150 million, smashing Chelsea's transfer record. So we'll have to wait and see. Again, they're running out of days here. It seems unlikely this is going to happen right now, but when we come around to the summer, don't be surprised if there's a bit of a bidding war between the Premier League's elite clubs over Jadon Sancho. And finally, we have the striker position, where Tammy Abraham has established himself as unquestionably Frank Lampard's choice to lead the line. It's behind him where things get interesting. Michy Batshuayi, despite being second choice, hasn't even played that much, and when he hasn't looked particularly impressive. And then Olivier Giroud has been nowhere to be seen. It seems like almost a guarantee that Giroud is going to leave before the end of the month, but he couldn't possibly play any less than he's playing at Chelsea right now. At the very least, whether it's in the next couple weeks or at the end of the season, there's no way Giroud's going to still be at Chelsea, and I won't be surprised if Batshuayi leaves either. The strongest rumor for a striker Chelsea might try to bring in is Moussa Dembele, no, not that one, from Olympique Lyon in France. You might remember Dembele a couple of years ago really broke out by absolutely destroying the Scottish Premier League with Celtic, got the move to Lyon where he's continued to do well and be one of Ligue 1's top scorers over the past couple of seasons. Of course, playing in Ligue 1, there is the ceiling that is PSG, and your ambitions are limited if you're playing in France for any other club. So I would understand if Dembele, who certainly has the quality to take it to a higher level, was looking to make a move sooner rather than later. He's still only 23 years old. He would cost a lot of money, but he's going to be cheaper now than he might be in a couple years, where he has the potential to be one of the world's elite strikers. It could end up being a great investment down the line, and for Chelsea would give them a formidable 1-2 punch for the future with Abraham and Dembele teaming up. So again, we're coming to the end of the month. I won't be shocked if Chelsea don't do anything, but for a club that has traditionally spent so much money, you'd think they have some saved up from the summer to really go big here in January and try to ensure that they'll be in the Champions League next year, no matter what happens in the Champions League knockout stages that are starting here next month in February. I really think Chelsea need to add a couple pieces. Most notably, I'd like to see them add a left back, and if they don't, I'm definitely going to be a little nervous if they're going to be able to hang on to that fourth spot. So we'll see what happens. Teams across the soccer world have a couple more weeks here to add to their squads for the home stretch, and I think few clubs are in a more precarious position than Chelsea, with a whole lot of teams behind them who'd like to take that fourth spot away from them. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to check out the video where I offer brief suggestions for every Premier League team on how they can strengthen their squad in the remaining days of the January transfer window. If you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate it if you liked it, subscribed, and shared it around with your other Premier League watching friends or anybody who you think might enjoy it. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time.